Well, welcome everyone to our 20-minute transformation. Switching it up this week, doing it on a Tuesday. Thank you for those of you who have still been able to turn up. I'm off to Brisbane to be at a conference, so I wasn't able to do it tomorrow as I normally would. But that's okay. If you are watching this on the replay, you can still play, grab the workbook, and we can jump right into it. All right. So what we're going to be doing is, as we do every single time, we're going to go through one shift with a big impact. And we're going to do it in 20 minutes. So let's get into it. All right. So this week, we're going to be talking about going from confusion to clarity. And what I'm talking about is in particular around the area of emotions. You and I are emotional beings, and therefore everything that we do is subject to the way that we navigate our emotions. So I want to make sure that we cover this off as we're getting into all the new stuff that we're doing this year. All right. So if you look along in your workbook, you'll see the 9 crucial shifts. Everything we do runs around these 9 shifts. And the shift that we're talking about today is in the area of intelligence. It's going from relying on a singular intelligence and predominantly your cognitive intelligence, your technical ability, to using all of, or indeed multiple intelligences. And what I want to do is just lay a little bit of a framework and a platform around that first before we get started. Okay, so one of the biggest things that we do, as I said, when we rely on our singular intelligence is we look only at cognitive intelligence as being valuable. And we become totally reliant on our technical ability. Now, being that you are in professional services, your technical ability is definitely something that you need. However, all those other parts of you being in that role don't have anything to do with the technical ability. And my experience is they're the ones that can eat your lunch. They're the ones that can create all the conflict and all the challenges for you. And they don't normally get taught in your university course. In terms of the ability to develop these skills, they're always looked at as soft skills. It's a term that I use to be relevant. However, I don't like the term at all because these aren't the soft skills, team. These are the real skills. These are the skills that set you apart and help you to, as I promise in everything that we do, get yourself to the results that you need faster so that you can have more influence, have more income, and make a bigger impact in your career. So we've got to shift our thinking from those soft skills. And in particular, in this area of emotions, we've got to be able to learn how to go from reacting to everything that goes on around us. And the fact that we are emotional beings means that we are susceptible to this unless we learn what to do differently. And unfortunately, this leads to conflict. Okay, so it doesn't have to be that way. So what we're looking at now is what are the other intelligences that you have to be able to bring in? And let me tell you, there's quite a number of them, but we're going to just focus on one in particular today. In fact, I'll throw in a second one as well. So the intelligence we're talking about here is your emotional intelligence. And as well as that, we're going to be able to build skills that'll help us with our social intelligence. And that becomes then your superpower because these are not skills that most people have. And it allows you to respond instead of reacting. respond in a measured way, respond a logical and a strategic way that's good for you, good for others, and good for the greater good. And then instead of having conflict, you've got collaboration, which is definitely the way that we need to go. And it allows you as a leader to be calm under pressure. So this is the shift that we want to make here. And I want to step you through in this time that we've got the fundamentals around this. And I'm really excited because I've just recently created a more up-to-date, relevant model of emotional and social intelligence. And the reason I've done that is that things have changed. We're in a totally different world today to what we were in a little while ago, and it continually changes, as you know. Okay, so what we want to do here is get an understanding, firstly, of human emotions. So there's so many misconceptions out there, things that you've been taught, that I had been taught, things that we repeat and we think that we need to do when it comes to emotions. So what I want to do is help you to understand what emotions and feelings are. Okay, so if you're taking notes here, this first step here, or the first part of the process, is that you experience some sort of a sensation in your body somewhere. And you then need to do something with that. So the second part then is you have an interpretation of what you think's going on. So this sensation, you make it mean something. The next thing that happens is that it creates thought processes. You start thinking, and those thoughts are connected to your belief system, to your previous emotional memories, and to the meaning that you've put on that particular moment in time. That then leads you to a point where you choose how you feel. Now, just saying that might be a little bit different to what you've heard before. No one else can make you feel anything. You can actually choose how you feel. And in fact, in every situation you do. So for those of you who are a little bit confused like I was, well, hang on, emotions, feelings, aren't they the same things? Well, yes, in the general way of looking at it, we could say that. But this gives you a really, really good understanding. And I'm going to go back and show you why. And the last thing then is, out of that feeling, you behave in a certain way. It can be good or it can be not so good, right? And I don't know about you, but I know for me, and I know for many people that I work with, have these thoughts of, well, hang on a minute, why am I behaving this way? I know that's not what I want to do. That's because there's not an understanding and there's not some clarity and control in the emotion. All right, so let's have a look at the two parts of this. So what we've got here is, on one side, we've got physiological. So it's a physical sensation somewhere in your body that says something's going on in your world, right? It's a cue, it's a clue, it's some sort of a sensation, a stimulus, if you will. Then as you go into the interpretation, the thoughts and the feeling, which leads to the behavior, that is the psychological. That's based on your identity, who you believe you are and who you believe you're not. It's based on your limiting beliefs. It's based on your past emotional experiences that you're reliving in that moment. It's based on many things. So what we want to do here is we want to be able to control what happens here in the gap, right, between the physiological and the psychological. And if we can take captive some of those thoughts, some of those feelings, some of those beliefs, all those, if we can take those captive, then we're able to control the outcome. Okay. All right, so let's have a look at the model that I've created around this. Now, this is not a model that's better than anyone else's model. This is not a model that I've done because I need to have a model that's mine. What I've done over the last now 17 odd years of being heavily involved in the area of emotional and social intelligence is I've learned from others, I've studied and I've grown, and as things have changed, I've adapted. And I feel that right now there needs to be an adaptation of how we integrate emotional intelligence and social intelligence into what we do. I feel we need to do it and have a lot more simplified and less competencies, and the competencies need to be relevant. So this is just what I've done from my experience. However, it's based on my work in the 4-quadrant model that come from the early 80s, and the same principles apply. We've learnt so much more through fMRI. We now know in real time what's going on in the brain, so we can look at that, and we've been able to debunk a lot of the myths around emotions, and things like we've all got 6 hardwired emotions and we all experience them the same. Those things are not true. Left and right brain dominance, all that neuroscience that has been debunked. Right? So what I've done is put this model together, and I want to give you the opportunity now to go through this with me. As we go in the coming months, I'm investing a lot of time and energy and money to change everything so that it goes around this model. At the end of the day, the model's there for you and I to be able to go on a journey in our own context, in a strategic way that's going to help us to get results in today's world. All right. So there are 4 key areas that I want to talk about and introduce you to, and then we're going to hone down into one of those. So we've got 2 areas here that we want to look at. So these 2 circles above the line, this is all about self. Right? It's all about you. This down here is all about others. So we've got emotional intelligence and we've got social intelligence. Okay. So we've also got the 2 on the left is about awareness. Awareness is the start of everything. If we are aware of what's going on, we can make some change. Consequently, if we're not aware of what's going on, then we're not able to make the change. And then we have management. So we've got this awareness. What do we do with it, right? It's not just there to be aware. It's to help us to manage. Now, we're not managing emotions. Emotions aren't there to be managed. We're not managing the physical sensations. What we're doing is we're managing the response to the emotion. So that's really important. Okay, so if we look at these 4 areas then, the first one, and this is where we're going to start today, is clarity. Clarity is being able to know what your internal states are, to be able to, in the moment, be able to recognize the emotion that you're experiencing, the sensation, and be able to know in your body how that is working, and some other competencies which we're going to go deeper on in a moment. Then on the management side, we've got control. It's up to you and I to control our response to the emotion, to control our behavior. And before that, control the thinking and the belief structure, etc., that I've talked about. All right. So then we come down into the others area. And the first part here is connection. So we've got to be able to connect with people on a deeper level and be empathetic and understanding and be able to recognize what could be going on in the other person emotionally. Just because we experience an emotion a certain way, and we might think when talking to someone else or working with someone else that they're going through that as well. That may not be the case. So we've got to be able to get a deeper level connection, curiosity and understanding to be able to work with others. And then the reason we're doing that is so that we can have a more collaborative environment, so we can work with people rather than against them. Okay. So, as I said, and if we move these around here, these two areas are awareness and management. And the two circles with clarity and control, that's all about emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is your ability to be able to understand you and to control the behavior, control the response. And then we have social intelligence. So what we want to do today is we want to focus on this area here, right? And clarity, which is awareness. And in fact, if we look at it more deeply, this is self-awareness. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper into it and give you an actual strategy that you can use, right? Just looking at the time, we're doing well here. Okay, so there's a three-part process that we need to operate for the first part of that clarity. And the first thing that we need to do is notice the emotion. So in the moment, we've got to be able to discern what's going on. We've got to be open experiencing that rather than just be in the busyness of the day all the time. The next thing we've got to do then is we've got to give it a name. Remember I said, not everyone experiences emotions the same way. So we've got to be able to give it a name so that we can then have a strategy that works for that one. And then instead of managing the emotion, we've got to navigate it. So notice, name, and navigate. So to notice it, we've got to be able to pause. We've got to be able to stop and go, hey, what is the emotion I'm experiencing right now? The reason I put the what there in inverted commas is that when we ask what questions, I love how the brain works. It lights up neural pathways in the logical processes of our brain. If we ask, why am I feeling this? Then it's a different story altogether. And it can bring you down into the unhealthy emotional story that goes behind it with all those negative beliefs, etc. So when we name it, that is unique to us. As I said, we need to make sure that we call it what we think it is. You might recognize it as a totally different emotion if I'm experiencing the same thing as me. And the other thing that we've got to work on here is our vocabulary. There's over 2,000 words in the English language alone to describe an emotion that we could be going through at any given moment. And in fact, we could be going through more than one emotion at a time. So what we're going to do is develop a larger vocabulary, more expansive vocabulary around this, rather than the 4 to 6 go-to emotions that we currently use. And then the navigation is all about control. How do I control the thinking that's coming out of that? And first, before that, how do I control the interpretation? What I'm making that mean? How do I do that? And how do I control the triggers and all the things that happen with emotions? So notice, name, and navigate. All right. So just take that one layer deeper for us for today. So as I said, what we're talking about here is the clarity quadrant. And we are looking at emotional intelligence, and we are looking at awareness. Now, there are 3 competencies that we develop, and I've already introduced you to one of them. The first one is emotional awareness. This is your ability to be able to be tuned in to your body and present in your environment to be able to recognize and notice the emotions. The second is self-evaluation. The ability to accurately assess where you are in the competencies of emotional intelligence. And sometimes we need to get some help from others with that. And the third is personal power. The personal power is your ability to know that you've got everything within you and around you to get ahead in life, that you do belong, you are enough, that you are liked and loved. And it's all about building back that identity. It's about having self-confidence, which is the opposite of what we have a lot of times, which is self-doubt. So building those 3 areas will allow you to have more clarity. Okay, so just to finish this off, you've got the last page there where I'd love you to invest some time for yourself to look at, okay, what are the insights that come out of this for me? It could be, wow, there's such a thing as emotional intelligence. More importantly, with those insights, how am I going to implement them? And just as I tell you every single time, it's not about how do I go from one side of a dichotomy to the others where I didn't have them, now I've got all of them. No, what's the next step? What's one thing that I could do? You know, it could be just getting some more education around these competencies of emotional intelligence. It could be just stopping in the moment 3 or 4 times a day and going, okay, what am I experiencing right now? But it's about incremental. And then thirdly, and most importantly for me, what's the impact that's going to have? If you're able to stay in control of your emotional responses, what's that going to do for you in your career, in your day to day, in how you feel when you go home of a nighttime, whatever it is. So there we've had another 20 minutes of going through a particular topic. This one I could go on for days because it is so important. And in fact, for me, it's a competency that I never had. I didn't even know it existed. But when I discovered it 17, 18 years ago, I tell you one thing that I did find out, that it was one, that I didn't have any, and 2, is that it was the skill set that I was missing that caused all the problems in my military and in my corporate career. So if you, want to know more, so if you want to know more about this topic, you can connect with me. You can ask questions here in the community. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, there's heaps of ways to get in touch. And my encouragement to you is to flip the switch. These are not soft skills. These are the ones that are holding you back from getting the results you want. So I'll see you again in a couple of weeks' time when we do our next 20-minute transformation. And what we'll do is go deeper into the competencies of emotional intelligence. I'll see you then.